start that. Great. Well, welcome everybody to the April 3rd meeting of the Vermont Climate Council Just Transition Subcommittee meeting. Probably repeated meeting twice there, but that's okay. It's good to see you all. And we are going to go through a few different things. I'm going to pull the agenda up on my screen after I download it. So we don't yet have a quorum, so we're not going to approve minutes yet. Hopefully we get everyone, or at least enough people. Let's see. All right. Carrie, if you could take notes, that would be awesome. I would very much appreciate it. All right. I'm just going to go through the agenda real quick. Okay. I haven't done this in a long time. All right. So we're not going to do the minutes, but if we get to a quorum, we'll go through the minutes for the last couple of meetings. We want to go through some updates from the Climate Action Office. We've had some full council meetings, some pretty substantive, like we went through a lot of stuff on the last few meetings. So I think that would be great for us all to know what happened there if we weren't tuning in on those. And then Sophie's going to give us an update about what's going on at the legislature around the Global Warming Solutions Act. And then just every time we have, especially a climate council meeting, a full council meeting, there's a Just Transitions time set aside, and we can discuss if there's something that our subcommittee would really like to put forward as something that we want to be lifted up during those times. Recently, it has been a big focus on hearing public comment, and Sophie's been doing a great job of summarizing that and lifting it up. And then for the actual, climate action plan, which will be finalized and voted on at the end of June, we have a couple things that we can be working on and that also are our responsibility. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll have some time for comment, and then talking about what's next after today. So any questions about the agenda today? Any comments, concerns? If that all sounds good, I'm going to drop this and we can hear some updates.
Was I first on that? Sorry.
Yeah, well, it was you and me. It was you and me.
Okay.
So I don't know if you wanted to jump in first. And
sure. Yeah. But I think you kicked it off well. There's been a lot of meetings, council meetings, a lot happening in that area. On the March 10th there was a meeting. I think that was one where we started looking at the priority actions as a full count. The council started looking fully, and so that was specifically the council reviewed agricultural and ecosystems, rural resilience and adaptation, and cross-cutting priority actions, and they were able to flag any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions for revisions. There was a lot of discussion there on those subcommittee topics and priority actions. And then there was another council meeting specifically focused on cap and invest. So for that meeting, they brought in folks from New York State, Washington State, and California, Quebec, who have successfully stood up and implemented, or in the process of standing up, a cap and invest program. And that is related to specifically cross-sector mitigation recommendations that would be in the plan around the feasibility of a cap and invest program. And so it's a way for the council to become more informed in that process. And then the most recent council meeting was really finishing up that priority action review of specifically cross-sector mitigation, priority actions, as well as a biomass recommendation was my understanding. And Kelly, that was the one that I wasn't at, but if you have anything else you want to add about that
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, I absolutely, yeah, I can fill in a little bit. And then also for anyone who is not totally familiar with the Cap and Invest, basically that would be a program where, and so several different states and regions have these, but it's that people who are bringing in the fossil fuels and things like that, or emitting a lot. Actually, yeah, I'm not an expert on this, but people who are emitting a lot of greenhouse gases will have to either clean up their act, or they can pay a little bit extra, and then the proceeds from that can be used to invest in either investing in energy efficiency and things like that, but also very likely a lot of that would go to helping make sure that anybody who is low and median income, who might be like, oh, well, suddenly my gas costs more, that they would directly just get paid back for that. Like any excess cost at the gas pump or anything like that would get right back into the pockets of the people who are most going to feel the burden of that. And sometimes even like making it less costly. So that's the Cap and Invest program, and it doesn't necessarily have to just be about, so the big studies are about transportation energy, so, gas and things like that, but it could also loop in some of our heating energy and heating and cooling and things like that. So that might also be woven in. That was part of our conversation at the meeting on Monday, the Climate Council meeting. And so what we've been going through, and I think this probably would be helpful context for everybody. So we've been going through these sort of really high level sort of slides that the council is sending out for public comment and all of this stuff. And they're pretty succinct things that don't have a ton of detail behind them right now. There is detail in, like, if you want to go digging, it's there probably in like the subcommittee's public records, but for public comment through the month of April, just saying, these are our priority actions. What do you all think? How are we on the right track? And so there were some from each of the three big subcommittees: cross-sector mitigation, the ones doing not that we're not big, but the ones that are doing the like recommendations. So cross-sector mitigation, rural resilience and adaptation, and ag and ecosystems have put together a bunch of really high priority ones. There's some others that are not ready for prime time necessarily, but are going to be part of our final plan. And these are what we are putting forward to the public to say, comment on these. Where are we? How are we doing? And then there are also some cross-cutting issues, such as, education. Let's see, education, workforce development,
Tax settlement.
compact settlement. Yeah, because that goes across, like, it will reduce vehicle miles traveled. So that's in the transportation thing, which is in cross sector, but then it's also in the rural resilience and adaptation thing. So am I missing another cross-cutting one? Health, public health, because that's a big one. And so there's some different things like that that aren't necessarily in any one subcommittee's wheelhouse. And then so at the meeting on Monday, we went through some things that we weren't able to. Oh, is it under rural? Okay, that maybe it's under rural resilience. That makes sense. But I know there was like a special task group that was looking at public health, and that was awesome, because I don't think we had that when we first did the climate action plan. So I was really pleased that was pulled out. Yeah, so we went through a lot of them at the beginning of March, but we didn't have time for everything, and there were a couple of hiccups where like the slides we had didn't exactly match up with what the subcommittee is meant to have in the slides. So we went through some more in detail on Monday, and then just went through again on the ones we'd already reviewed, just to make sure we didn't have any serious concerns or anything about sending these out as a total draft with big caveats like, no, we have not agreed and voted on these, but these are the things the subcommittees have lifted up, and the climate council hasn't said like, you shall not pass. So those are going to go out for comments from the public, and we're going to have a bunch of public meetings. So that's sort of how the meeting on Monday wound up. And so the chapter that our subcommittee drafted, some of the other chapters like science and data has some chapters that they've written. Those things, as far as I understand, are not going to be part of what we're sort of explicitly putting out for public comment, but they're all, I think, available publicly at this point, or they should be soon. And all of the other subcommittees have intro chapters that they're drafting to accompany these priority actions. And then also there are some other actions that are in there that aren't necessarily lifted up as the priority ones. So the final climate action plan is going to be big, but we're trying to make it easy to like take pieces of it and understand what's going on. So it's not just like, here, read this 300-page textbook. Because that's kind of what it felt like the first go around. Sophie, I think you were there for most of the meeting on Monday. Is there anything I'm missing that you wanted to mention about what's going on? And then I think also you might be up for legislative update.
Sure thing. I actually was not at most of the meeting on Monday, and I apologize. My dog's squeaky toy in the back is coming through on the audio. But yeah, I can give the ledge update if that sounds good for now.
I guess before you jump to that, are there any questions from folks about like where things are with the climate action plan and the climate council?
So this is Abby. I would just love to ask, I mean, I think it seems and sounds okay to not have the just transition chapter out for public comment, since it is generally kind of a summary of our process and improvements between the original plan and the revised plan. But I just want to check with our subcommittee, since that's new from what I had understood before. Are there any big red flags about our chapter not receiving public comment review?
I guess my question would be, have we fully, is the most recent draft we agreed on available on, has it been posted publicly? I think it has, right? So if people want to, yeah?
With our materials.
Sorry, you cut out on my end, Sophie. What did you say?
Yeah, it's public with our meeting materials, but there's not one consolidated public place with all of the drafts as they currently are.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that's sort of where most of the other ones are sitting. That, and it was just like pretty much, we were probably the only people who had one of those sort of introductory chapters that were like, yeah, we're ready to have that shared. And it would be weird to have just that one chapter that was just, just our subcommittee, and then a bunch of bullet point priority actions. So I think that's why, and this was, I think, maybe came more from the climate action office than anything else. But I asked this at the very end of the meeting, and I was like, let me make sure I got this straight, because we had definitely talked about including our chapter and the science and data chapters and things like that as part of what we would release for public comment. But I think other people were like, I wrote it by myself, I don't feel comfortable. Whereas our subcommittee went through such a process, we're like, yeah, we got it, we vetted it, it's good. Comment, but it would just be awkward to have it only that one chapter, and then it'd be like almost a non sequitur. Not exactly, but yeah, correct me or ask questions or whatever. That was my sense, though.
Liz, does that sound all like where everything landed? I'm just not in the loop.
I mean, I think I wasn't at the meeting where Kelly asked the question, but it's been my most recent understanding that we weren't putting out chapters for these public spring events. I wonder, I haven't seen like, any kind of the presentation content yet, but I'm curious if there's any like has there been any kind of like broad strokes of the just transition process that could be mentioned in that might be helpful for folks to know when they go to these sessions? Like, could that be a way to integrate it without doing if we're not putting out the full chapter?
Yeah, I mean, Sophie, I bet we could, right?
But Liz, are you describing what could be like an introduction? Is that what you were suggesting, of like a bit about process, and then at the kickoff of each of the public engagement sessions, and then review of the specific recommendations as the working part of the meeting? Did I understand what your suggestion was?
Yeah, I just it was kind of just like just kind of a thought out loud. I just wonder, I haven't seen the presentation of like what Sophie and others might have been preparing already for these spring events, but if there's kind of like a general kind of like background kickoff on CAP before they dig into these activities, like maybe it's worth mentioning just kind of in broad strokes like what the just transitions process has been, just so folks know that this has been a part of the climate action process. And I'm not sure, Sophie, if you already kind of incorporated that, but that's just, I'm hearing this discussion of like, oh, like bummer, we did this work on the chapter and we can't put it out there. But I just wonder if there's a way, if it could be shared even just like verbally within this kickoff, that more to come in a chapter in the actual plan, but this is something that's been happening.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I can raise it to David and Jane as part of the presentation. Yeah, and I had heard something about the introductory chapters, like not the substantive chapters, but just the introductory chapters being able to be shared during the.
Yeah,
but
that
maybe
was
that came.
Yeah, so that was my initial understanding, was that those were going to be part of it, and I tried to be really crystal clear about whether those were still intended to be included, because in our planning meeting for tonight, we had talked about, is this okay to go out? And we all said, yeah, totally. Our subcommittee said yes. So I wanted to clarify that. And then I was at the meeting on Monday and I said, are these chapters going to be included in what we send out for public comment? Oh, sorry, my computer is probably crashing a little bit. Can you guys hear me okay? Maybe.
Yes.
Okay. I'm getting nuts. All right, I'm gonna close some applications, but and then I got like oh no, we're not including those. And I was like, I'm not talking about the ones that go in front of that are like from the cross-sector mitigation subcommittee and things like that. I'm talking about the intro ones, the wraparound chapters. And they're like, no, we're not including those either. So that was what I heard, but it was also past the top of the hour and we were supposed to be gone. So that's why I was asking if Liz knew officially, but my sense is that we were the only, like, maybe not the only ones, but we were one of the only folks who had a chapter that we had said, yes, send it out there. And I can see why having that be the only thing, along with a bunch of like high level priorities, would just be sort of an awkward document to put out. But I would love to, Sophie, if you want to bring that up with David and Jane and others, like how we can at least incorporate some of that into what we're sharing with folks, at least in the meetings, I think that would be helpful. Okay, so all right, we're a little bit past our time, but I think we're also being a small group, we can probably get through this. Sophie, do you want to share a little bit about the legislative stuff? And I'm going to close a bunch of things on my computer so that I don't freeze up again.
Yeah. So hopefully folks have heard in the media that, or otherwise that, changes to the Global Warming Solutions Act were proposed. This is relevant to all us because that's what established the Climate Council, et cetera, climate plan. hold on, I was just gonna share my screen. Here we go. Just finding the right window. I thought I'd share with you all this, not this calendar, but this PDF, which is posted, Jane put this together for the most recent Climate Council meeting. And it's just a brief snapshot of what legislation is under consideration in the legislature this session that has some kind of a tie to climate action. So I'll skip down here to 289, which has been called like the Climate Omnibus Bill. That's the one that do with the Global Warming Solutions Act. Also proposes a couple other things with it. It talks about the changing the renewable energy standard to the clean energy standard. That would make nuclear eligible to count towards the energy goals. There might be another change to that I'm forgetting. That's the difference between the renewable, which does not include nuclear, versus clean, which does include nuclear. I think this number is not supposed to be there, but there's something about funding electric vehicle incentives, and then there's these amendments to the Global Warming Solutions Act, which include kind of most in the spotlight change is changing the target to a net target by 2035, and then staying net zero. So the update on that particular one is that it's in the at crossover, it's in the House, which means it's not going to pass out of the legislature. It's not going to pass as a bill this session. And then if the House passes it out by the end of the year, then it will go over to the Senate for them to work with the bill in the second year of the biennium next year. So substantive testimony is ongoing on that. Feel free to take a look at this. Again, it's posted. I can put the link in the chat, but it's posted here on the 31st Climate Council meeting. Okay, link is in the chat. Happy to take any questions on that. Not sure if I can answer them, but another thing that came up in Kelly's update was just the engagement in April. And I don't know if we've talked substantively about that, but if folks have questions or want to talk to anything about that, I'm happy to answer.
No questions yet. Thanks for that update. That was helpful for me because I've been out of the loop. Any other questions, or we can move on to the next thing on our agenda, which is, so it says Climate Council meetings and steering committee meetings, but steering committee meetings are usually just for setting agendas for upcoming Climate Council meetings. However, I'm on the steering committee, and that's an opportunity for me to pitch to the rest of the steering committee anything that our subcommittee would like to have, elevate, or if we have something we want to present or something like that at a full council meeting. And the full council meetings are where most of the decisions are happening right now. So that's where if we have a really strong message or a story we want to share, that would be the place to do it. So as I mentioned when I was going through the agenda, what we've been doing for our Just Transitions moment most of the time, because we've had some really packed meetings, we have been just dedicating that to hearing a summary or reading public comment that we've received since the previous meeting. And Sophie's been doing an amazing job of compiling that. And last meeting, oh, Sophie, do you have the link to that? Because I bet our subcommittee would like to see. We had a ton of written public comment between we had a meeting, it was March 10th, and then on March 31st. And we had so much written comment, and a lot of really thoughtful stuff. And, you know, we only had like 5 minutes for Sophie to try to summarize it, but she did a great job of like pulling out some common themes and then finding some like really representative comments to read in full. And so, you know, I hope everybody had from the council, and I hope you folks can like bookmark that and just read through it, because there's some really cool stuff in there, and like we have some amazing Vermonters providing some cool, very, very thoughtful feedback. So anyway, I think our next full climate council meeting is going to be an interesting one, where part of it is that we're going to be doing a land acknowledgement exercise. And so this actually might be something that our subcommittee would want to attend, that, because I don't know, I was part of this when we did it before the first climate action plan, and it was really powerful. Judy Dow led this wonderful exercise with us, explaining the history of land acknowledgements and what they mean to Indigenous people, and then had us all literally go outside and be in nature and in touch with the land and take a moment. And it was excellent. And so we're going to do something like that again, because I think it's important for everybody who's signing off on this climate action plan and helping to craft this land acknowledgement to understand the importance of this, and not just to say it as like, you know, the newest sort of like lip service to, oh yeah, acknowledging that Indigenous people were here before. So I would just recommend being there for that part of the meeting, just because I think it's going to be really powerful and really amazing. And I felt that last time, but I forget what the date is. If we the 14th, I think.
Yeah, it's April 14th. Yep.
So anyway, that's part of it. And what's the other half of the meeting? We're doing something other sort of businessy kind of thing.
That's when we're going to be reviewing like and discussing draft chapters. So
okay,
yeah.
So that also might be of interest to folks here, because those are, you know, I don't think we'll be talking about our chapter, right? Just probably the other.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that still needs to be discussed. But yeah, I would think probably the ones related to the recommendations, just given time constraints, but I could be wrong. Yeah.
So anyway, so that's, let's see, what am I supposed to be talking about? So anyway, so at the climate council meetings coming up after April, we'll have a bunch of public comment that we're going to get. We have a bunch of meetings that we'll get a lot of feedback, and then the climate council comes back together and has to digest that and try to hammer out all the rest of the details and make a really amazing plan. And the deadline for that is July 1st. So all the meetings in May and June are going to be busy, but I also think we have an opportunity here to try to figure out where we want to make sure we lift up the Just Transitions voice. Not that we need to decide it right now, but just something to have us be thinking about. And I think some of the stuff later on our agenda might help give us some ideas about what we want to do. So I would suggest, unless there's questions about what I just said, that we move to talking a little bit about, you know, the call out boxes and things that we can do to help support the other, you know, the other, and I don't know that we've met since we haven't since the March 10th meeting, but I did mention to everybody on the climate council saying, hey, Just Transitions wants to give you feedback, and so we might be looking at what you're recommending and looking at your chapters and offering feedback, and please, you know, hear us and don't be surprised. But we're also here for questions. So I just wanted to make sure that got lifted up and that they would be receptive, and everyone actually seemed like they were like, yes, thank you, this is so exciting. we need your thoughts. So people are prepared for us to give feedback.
letsmakeaplan.org from Amazon Business, offering business buying.
Mona, I think we're hearing an ad. Hi, Mona. Great to have you here.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Wonderful. So, Mona, we were just talking about, this is a great time to jump in because we were just talking about some of the next steps on the, what we're going to be doing to support the final draft of the climate action plan. So we talked about doing call out boxes for our chapter, but also looking at some of the other chapters that are drafted by other subcommittees and maybe looking at their priority actions and trying to figure out how we can either be looking at reviewing them for how they're incorporating equity into their plans, or maybe finding things in there that we could then give them a little like just transitions call out box, something to lift up a story or something that's related to what they're saying, or do a little plain language summary. We can't do everything, so we need to obviously find what we think is most meaningful. So that's the discussion that we were going to have. So Sophie, Sam's not here. Were there some like examples of call out boxes that you had based on, I'm looking at what the agenda says, and
Yeah, I didn't get anything from her, and mine was kind of the second step after
okay.
her first round. I don't have a share.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, so that's, and that's fine. I think we have some time, but yeah, so then so in our agenda it just says review priority actions, and I think that would be where we really probably should put our energy, and this is something we were discussing. Not necessarily for now looking at the chapters that other subcommittees have written, but just looking at the priority actions that the council agreed on that are moving forward, and getting public comment. And this would be an opportunity for us as a subcommittee to look through them and give our thoughts. And I know Matthew's not here now, but he was at the meeting on Monday for most of the time, I think. So he was at the council meeting, so he's seen these too, and I'm sure he'll have thoughts. So the question is, what's our capacity, and can we look through these, and maybe in what form would we want to do that? Sophie or Liz, do you have like a quick link to just so people see I don't think this is the final one, because we did have some edits at the last meeting, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think Liz put it in the chat kind of at the top of the meeting.
You did with the slides.
Yeah, here I'll repost.
Oh, priority actions. Yes, you did. Yeah. Yeah.
I think since Mona didn't have access to that, so I just reposted them.
Thank you.
So cards.
Here, I can pull them up and just like show folks what they look like, and let's see how many tabs I have open. But yeah, so it's basically like 2 slides to a page, and these are the priority actions, and they are not in, the numbers don't mean anything. They're not in a particular order. It's just so that we could be like, oh, transportation action number 3. Not that it's the 3rd most important or anything like that. And so they go through different areas. Some of them have more detail than others. So this isn't the final one, but when we do have it, all right, I'm going to drop it just so people can see like what it looks like. But when we do have the final one that's going out to the public, which should be pretty soon, I think it would be helpful if our subcommittee also had a few people at least go through and just make some comments. And I don't know if it would be helpful to do like a small group, read through, make notes, and then come together and talk about them. There's a lot there. It's not an easy thing to ask, but I would love to have a subset, at least of our subcommittee, you know, really think about these and see if there's something that we, given our collective experience and, you know, thoughtfulness, that we might have some things that we would want to recommend to the subcommittees who put these forward, or questions. I mean, I think a lot of it might be just questions, clarifying questions, because they're very simple and straightforward. I mean, they're very high level, right? And so a lot of times I think there are clarifying questions, and the subcommittees are going to have more detail on a lot of these that's not in these very short paragraphs, that our questions might prompt a better final recommendation when they put in more details. So yeah, anyway, that's an open question. What's our capacity? What are we interested in doing? And how would we best be able to review these and then give helpful feedback to the other subcommittees? Yeah, Sophie, go ahead.
I just want to chime into that prompt that should the task would need to be completed by like May 1st, right?
Yeah, so we
Like,
have
this needs
about a month. Yeah.
4 meetings of the council.
So does that preclude it from happening as a subgroup and then being brought back to our May just transition subcommittee meeting based on that timeline?
I don't think so, because if a subgroup gets together during April, and then I'm pretty sure the May just transitions meeting is Thursday, May 1st, right? The first Thursday. I actually happen to know I'm not going to be able to join that one because it conflicts with climate action plan engagement. So if the subcommittee is able to like come together with what the subgroup did on May 1st, that's great.
And the council meets on May 5th, so that timing would work fine to like even have that feedback to the council before that meeting. So I don't know, thoughts from folks, and we don't have a ton of members here, but anyone have thoughts about what, you know, another potential? I didn't leave a lot of time for people to chime in. Happy to hear others. A potential thing that comes to mind would be sort of assigning like, read these over, reflect on them, and then we just have a time that anyone who wants to can come together and we can sort of compile our notes. And I say anyone who wants to, without worrying that we're gonna have a quorum and have it be a public meeting by accident, because we seem not to have a quorum anytime we have a normal scheduled meeting. So I think that might be a good way to go. And, you know, if we end up with too many people, someone will just bow out and it'll be me. But yeah, that might be a way to do it, just to say like, hey, let's all reflect on these, and then please, you know, we'll invite folks to a meeting that's optional that we can compile our notes and then be able to share them at the next full subcommittee meeting. If that, I don't know, that to me seems like less pressure. Yeah, Danielle, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I agree that it would be a lot to go through right now.
Oh, sure.
There's definitely a lot there, but I'm wondering, you're saying like, you know, compile our thoughts, or reactions, or what exactly are we adding to them? Are we like, what's it going to look like?
Right.
I guess, what's the ask of us?
Yeah, I think what would be useful, based on where my understanding of where folks are at who put these together, is that it would be useful if we had either, you know, if there's like a big red flag where we're like, this is a terrible idea for equity or something like that. I doubt we're going to have a ton of those, because these people are being really thoughtful about that aspect of things. But if we have questions, or like, hey, this seems like a good idea, but how are you going to ensure that this is equitable, right? It's a good idea, but it could be done in an equitable way or an inequitable way. How are you going to make sure that's, so that could be baked into the future plan. And so we might have some really good insightful questions that we might ask. And so I have a feeling that some of these recommendations are great on paper and maybe just need a little bit more. And maybe they've already answered those questions too. We don't know for sure because there's more detail that's not been included in these like really short things. But that's my thought, is that we may go through and find a few that we think are either like, these are key for equity priorities, these are lacking details, but could be great if you do it in the right way. Things like that. Does that help? And this is like, there's no like one clear answer, right? But I have a feeling that if we like use our, put on our equity goggles and we look at these with that lens, that would be helpful for the folks who drafted them, because they're obviously thinking about and caring about equity, but they may not, they're also thinking about other things like, reducing emissions and how to make sure that people are away from riparian corridors where they don't get flooded. And there's just so many different moving pieces. And so our service that we could provide, I think, would be to like look at it specifically through our equity lens and ask good questions.
So Kelly, I'm sort of thinking of this as almost like a component to the public engagement feedback, where Just Transition Subcommittee members could be offering kind of considerations back to the subcommittee to either consider or think through or reframe or use different language, or even just kind of consider the equity perspective. And then is the collective, this is kind of like a general question I have, is then after the public engagement process and or comments that our committee could also contribute, then other subcommittees are going to take those recommendations, or the Climate Council is going to take those recommendations and make changes? Like what happens after the public engagement part? Yes, absolutely. There will definitely be changes made. A lot of what's happening is probably sort of a little bit more at the council level, but I do think, and Sophie or Liz tell me, I do think the subcommittees that have drafted these are probably going to take them up after public comment and then bring revisions. No, it's all just going right back to the council. Okay. So it's all going right back to the council, because I know that's where most of it lives, but I also think the subcommittees have answers that the council might not have. So
Liz, it'd be helpful to hear from Liz on any connection too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my understanding this is all going to be happening at the council level at this point going forward. I mean, there's been instances so far in the revision process, just from the prior action review, I'm sure as you've seen, Kelly, that council members may pull in a couple of subcommittee members with specific expertise to ask clarifying questions in the revision process. But when it comes to like deciding like this is our final version, that is at the council level.
Yeah. I just didn't know if like, I think to some extent there will be like a little back and forth between the subcommittees and the full council, just because of not like back and forth, like moving it from one house to another or like one chamber to another, like in the legislature, but a little bit of, hey, subcommittee, what did you mean by this? And subcommittee goes, oh yeah, sorry, our language wasn't clear. We actually meant this. So that kind of back and forth where the subcommittee who drafted it may be able to shed light on some of the things that, maybe weren't clear, or be able to say, oh yeah, we could achieve the same goal except with this different change, because they have a level of expertise in some of these areas that the full council may not have. So, but yes, the decision making at this point is with the council. Yeah, go ahead, Sophie.
Right. Just to clarify that, I don't think any of the subcommittees that we're drafting are meeting at all between now.
Okay.
It's only been the Just Transitions and Science and Data subcommittees that have continued to meet regularly since everything went to the council. And so often when the council, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, Liz, and based on my little window into the process, is like when the council needs clarification, they'll often contact the subcommittee co-chair, the civic subcommittee member who's like really in the know on that particular thing. But it's not like they're having meetings in the same way that we are. So I just want to clarify that when Kelly's saying the subcommittee, she's not meaning the entire subcommittee. Right.
Yes, thank you, Sophie. Yeah, I meant sort of like a phone a friend situation, not a call a meeting situation. And Liz, is that?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they're welcome to ask questions to folks, but council members aren't required to.
Right.
So it's really the council deciding how to handle it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that us sort of also providing our feedback at the same time that the council is digesting feedback from the public, I think that's good timing, right? It's a time when the council is getting feedback on all of these things and can be incorporating new ideas and trying to make these things better. So let me go back. Where's my agenda? So what do people think about maybe just saying like, we'll send a thing, we'll send these, once we have the revision of what goes out to the public, because there's a couple changes. What do people think about sending that to the full subcommittee, our full subcommittee, and then setting a date later in April where we can have a small group sort of discuss and come up with a list of our thoughts and suggestions to bring to, or maybe that's our agenda for the May 1st meeting. It's like our homework is read through these, see if you have thoughts or suggestions, and then our May 1st meeting could just be us. Rather than have another meeting, because that's the last thing I want. Go through and say like, okay, did you have a chance to read these? Anything just jump out at you as something that needs, you have questions or it needs to be changed, or absolutely no, we can't do this, or whatever, like anything that just jumps out. We're not going to necessarily talk about every single thing because that's too much, but yeah, Sophie.
I'm also generally a fan of your meetings. I want to name that the idea of a additional, it would have to be a subcommittee meeting to work on this actively as a group is like, is the per diem thing. So just wanted to name that of like, if you wanted to be like, if you, the subcommittee, wanted to say, I only want to spend 2 hours on this, and it like, we could do that as calling a meeting of the Just Transition Subcommittee where it's a group working thing, then it's done, and you can and eligible for per diem. But I'm also I'm not advocating for that. I just want to name that as a factor.
I was thinking the same thing. That's kind of why I was like, why don't we just do it at our next meeting? And I think it's the trick then would just be getting, having everyone set aside a little bit of time to go through these and see if anything jumps out at you, and and we don't have to have answers. I think if we come back with questions for the council and the drafters of these, that's already a good start. So any thoughts? Does that sound good? Friendly amendments or any concerns about that idea? I think that this would be a way for us to be really, hopefully, useful to the rest of the council.
I have a question. Is there a reason, because of public records, that we couldn't collect written feedback from subcommittee members? I just wonder, like, if we start going through the action plan in a meeting, we might get like sidetracked pretty easily. So I guess I worry about going into a meeting with like open blank space. I'm not sure
Yeah.
like how effective that will be.
That's fair. Yeah. What we could do is we could have people give some, especially if they can't be there, you know. But even if they can, just like ask people to provide some sort of written feedback, but only to say like co-chairs and staff or something like that. So it's not the whole subcommittee getting it. And then we could sort of compile that, and that might also give us some direction on what we should talk about. You know, if we see that 5 people talked about, you know, the transportation action number X, then we know we need to talk about that. So that might be helpful. I think that's a good first step too. And then it's not like you can't also have other things that come up during the meeting, but then we get a little bit more focused, and we also can involve folks who maybe can't make the meeting or don't want to speak up in the public meeting format or whatever. So that's a good idea. I like that. Cool. Any other thoughts about that? Concerns?
So this is Abby. So just
Yeah.
for my benefit, so we're saying either or both are options. So either submit written comment as a subcommittee member, or that will be the focus of the May meeting, our May subcommittee meeting.
Yeah. So what was coalescing in my mind was that the homework will be to review the priority actions as soon as whatever the things that actually go out to the public, when they're finalized, which should be soon. Our homework as a subcommittee would be to review them. Anyone who has things and they would like to submit to write it down and say, these are my notes, because I know that's a process that works for a lot of people. Write down your notes and say, like, this particular one, I have these thoughts or whatever. Don't have to write notes on all of them. In fact, please don't, because I can't read them all. But send those to, Abby, Kelly, Sophie and Claire and Carrie or whatever. Like, we'll pick people who are going to receive them, but not the full subcommittee, so that we don't worry about the public record thing. And then we'll be able to look at them and as we're planning our May meeting, and know if there's like some really obvious ones that everyone's pointing at. And then anyone who doesn't submit something in writing also will be able to share what they're thinking about. If they have something that this come to the top for them, and then we can discuss things also that were already sent in writing. It's just a way to help compile some of our information, our thoughts, before we just have a free-for-all. Does that make sense?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Abby. So, if we're good to move on to talking about, we have another chapter that we're responsible for, which is it's a chapter about public engagement and what has happened. And obviously it hasn't all happened, so we haven't written it yet. But Sophie, I think, had like a basic outline that she wanted to run by us. Is that correct, Sophie?
Yes. Sorry, I'm muting myself. That was sent out with the materials, but I'm pulling up now, and I'll share my screen with you all. This is super basic, like 5 bullet points.
And I think the idea that Sophie had was just like us to give some feedback on, like, does this structure seem good? Right, Sophie?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, if folks, I think there's some opportunity for subcommittee members, especially to help with number 3. I think I make the most sense to be the person who writes number 2. I'm also happy to write number 1, but others subcommittee members wanted to help with that, that's another thing that could totally be shared. So number one is just a like paragraph introduction. Why is engagement important? Is it important that this process doesn't occur in a closed door room and includes multiple diverse voices in the process? So I think that's what I was thinking we would start with. It's like, why is this important? And why are we putting so much effort into this? Number two is what actually happened? What did that look like? When were the events? What were they about? Who came? And then finally, I think it's important to say, like, okay, we did all this engagement, then what happened with it? How did we use it? And that's where I could really use some help, especially from liaisons. And I think David and Liz and I kind of include, like, speak to how the council worked with the engagement, because I know this subcommittee won't have direct eyes on that. And Kelly, actually, you'd be really helpful with that. Number three. So that's kind of my thoughts. And yeah, major question would be like, does this make sense to people? Is there anything major missing? Anything different you want this to look like?
And forgive me, I'm eating. This is why my camera's off. Do we have a word limit, right? I can't remember if this is like, I think it's probably a short-ish chapter.
Yeah, I can't remember what word limit is, but there is a word limit. One other thing that was just like a thought on my mind that I didn't put in here in the outline, but we could do some pull quotes of some things, some powerful things that were said in this chapter of quotes from the engagement that Vermonters have shared.
I love that idea. You've already pulled out in like the public engagement reports and things from this summer some really awesome quotes. So I think that would be a great way to make it really engaging and meaningful.
Nice.
Mona, Danielle, any thoughts? Mona, I don't know. I heard a voice. I heard a small sound, but I don't know if you're trying to say something.
Just listening.
Just listening. Okay, that is totally fine. And I'm not sure. I don't even see Danielle on my screen right now. There she is. Any thoughts, Danielle? No. Yeah.
I had a quick question. This is Abby again. I was curious, would it be constructive to do a comparison similar to the Just Transition chapter of kind of capturing what happened for public engagement, or the like kind of in relation to number one of why public engagement is important, and maybe talk about the timing of public engagement, the support for like the kind of you know, the building it into the plan, and then kind of speaking to why the process in part two based upon part one, which is kind of like a vulnerability kind of component of just being really transparent about what didn't happen, as well as when we didn't have a lot of time and we didn't have a lot of planning ahead capacity for the initial plan. I don't know.
I think there might be some things that we put in our like main Just Transition chapter that could potentially be moved over to this one if they were like about what happened last time. I don't know if that fits, but I know we had some sort of things about public engagement and how it, you know, we didn't nail it last time, but I don't remember exactly what ended up in the final draft. but I do think maybe something in there, something Abby said was like, how we decided when and where and how to do our engagement during this process. And I don't know if you had that in mind, Sophie, but like having the stuff like, with certain groups during the summer, and then how we did public engagement during meetings, and we changed how we did that, and then this big intensive during April, and just some of the decisions we made about the where and the where, the when, and the how that we did this time.
Mm.
Also, last time there was still a pretty serious pandemic going on, so that kind of
Right.
that was tough. That was rough, but I think like a little bit about that, like maybe sub bullet for number 1 would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I mean, and then yeah, maybe there's stuff from the other chapter that just goes over, depending on, especially like hitting our word counts.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I would love to get some feedback from the liaisons, but I can also help with, how the council, like I can try to help with like how the council is incorporating the engagement here on out, since I'm in the meetings and in the steering committee meetings and the council meetings and that kind of thing. But I think our liaisons have they have a good insight into how the subcommittees were working through their questions and things like that. Any other
Great.
thoughts, or Sophie, you have more questions for us?
I think just maybe getting a little more clarity about like how I work with liaisons / maybe subcommittee co-chairs to get this part.
Subcommittee
people
co-chairs, that's a good resource too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I know. Like the one thing I remember from when we kind of tried to do this actually this winter with the just transition, because it's all related to incorporating just transitions into the plan, right? So I remember Abby emailed Billy and Jael and got a response. It was pretty short. There wasn't a lot of detail, and I think Abby and I then emailed and kind of like maybe a meeting would kind of like draw out a little bit more, and so one just reflecting on like that, would it make sense? Like I definitely don't have capacity for meetings over the next month with all the engagement that's happening, but just wanted to think through whether liaisons feel like they're able to, just send me 2 or 3 sentences, a short paragraph, or if liaisons feel like they need a little bit more information from the co-chairs. Like I know, Danielle, your meetings, the rural resilience meetings were like not at a time that were convenient for you. So I think probably like would it be helpful to have a quick chat with the co-chairs to get a little bit more insight on that, or ask them directly for a sentence or 2? Just trying to think through how we actually get that information, because it can be.
Yeah, I would say for rural resilience, you may want to reach out to the co-chairs, especially because after I presented the new visual and talked about community engagement and then incorporating feedback, more public feedback, I then didn't participate in like 3 months of meetings. So I don't have a grasp on if they were doing that. I also didn't go through the minutes, so I'm not sure. But I think talking to the co-chairs would probably be best, at least for that, for rural resilience.
And Danielle, is that something that you feel like you might have the capacity to like schedule a half hour with them? Normally I would totally volunteer myself, but this coming month, I'm just going to be straight out with all the engagement that's happening.
Yeah, or can it be by email or should it be a Zoom call or something?
Yeah, I would say whatever you think works best for them and you.
Okay.
Kind of from Abby's experience with Ag and Eco was sometimes email doesn't quite draw out enough.
Okay.
But that could be totally different in this instance.
And when would you like it by?
I think if it's by the end of the month, that's great.
Okay. Got it.
And this chapter is due is it due like June? When do we have to have this chapter? Because like, does this have to be vetted by the full council on June 30th or?
It's due June 1st.
June
So
1st.
Getting a draft in the works and, you know, getting the content together in early May will be helpful to be able to have something over to the council on June 1st.
And I do think if there's like, you know, it may be helpful. I think this goes back to like different people have different processes or like how they want to share information. And so getting someone to write a paragraph might be easier about what they experienced might be easier than setting up a meeting. And then for other people, a meeting or a phone call is easier than writing a paragraph, right? And but yeah, I think the co-chairs are going to be a really good resource. And I'll think about if there are, you know, I think there might be, I'll think about experiences at the full council level of what I think there's some council members who aren't necessarily co-chairs or anything like that, but they've had, you know, reflections on hearing public comment and things like that. So if I'll just keep that in my mind about people who are really like thoughtful and reflective. And we have some new members too, who I'm finding like it's really cool to hear their reflections because they're not used to the whole process necessarily. Like they've been in public meetings or whatever, but hearing the stuff that we hear about this exact topic, it would be really interesting to maybe get like a couple quotes from folks, whether to use them verbatim or just leave them in. So I'll try to think about that, Sophie.
That's cool. I like that idea, Kelly. I know when we like kind of reflected back after an engagement in October of like, hey, here's what state staff / counselors took away from this event, that was really well received and sounds like kind of a similar approach. I like that a lot.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. Any other thoughts or anything for Sophie about this? I'm excited. I think it's cool that we get 2 chapters. I feel like we had 1 chapter last time. I feel very special. So cool. No other thoughts. We had public comment queued up next. But it was like at 5:35. I don't think we need to go all the way till 6 if we don't have members of the public and we don't need the time. But so I would definitely recommend, unless anyone has an objection, that we jump to the what's next section. And then just, you know, we'll see if anyone jumps on from the public in the next couple minutes. Unless I'm missing something. No, I don't see any. That sound good with everybody? I got thumbs up. 2 thumbs up from Danielle. Sophie, do you want to drop your screen share? Awesome. Oh, Abby, hi. You're back. You're not on the road.
Hi everyone.
Oh, and I'm glad because you were part of the what's next. I think that was actually technically supposed to be you. So,
Yeah, thanks for running such a good meeting. Kelly, and for everyone's participation. Yeah, I mean, what's next is really just talking about our upcoming meeting schedule, and then if there's any other topics that members wanted to talk about. I think we've outlined kind of some of the next steps for the May meeting, which is really going to be the review of comments and feedback to the priority recommendations. And I'm not sure that we've quite developed the full strategy for how we're going to draft the public engagement chapter. So if we're going to use the same approach of like a subcommittee or different people tasked with drafting, and if we want to bring a draft back to the May meeting. So I think that still remains a little bit of a question for me. Seems like we might need to do that if we need a draft by June. So my guess is we'll have a pretty full agenda for May between those two tasks. And then, maybe we could generate, if there's any ideas that folks want to use for the June meeting. And then we would take, as we've mentioned before, we kind of have historically in the last few years taken a summer months of July and August off of meeting and then re-engaging in the fall. So we just wanted to, again, check that schedule, see how that worked for everyone, and solicit any ideas for the June meeting, unless the June meeting would also give us time to do some finalization of the public engagement chapter.
I do think June's important. Did you say, yeah, we should do a meeting in June. That might also, my guess would be that would be the time to finalize and approve the public engagement chapter. I know it's technically due June 1st, but Sophie, you're back, it looks like. But we'd be meeting what, June 5th?
Yeah, it's June 5th.
I think meeting in June to just be like, yes, we signed off on this chapter, because then the full climate action plan is due the end of June. But the public engagement stuff is like, it's a lot. And so, I don't know. I think we won't be able, my thought, and please, Sophie, tell me what you're thinking, but my thought is that if we have the public engagement in April, then people need to use it, digest it, incorporate it in May and in June, right? But we have to write a chapter before it's fully finalized. But so I think we do need that extra time. So I think we're gonna want to meet in June to approve that chapter, because like that is really, that's like one of those things where it's like, put it on your, when you're going on a trip, you put it on your like pack it in the morning before you go to the airport kind of list. Like the public engagement one feels like that's what that is to me.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me, Kelly. I was like, I think there's a lot that we'll have the content for in May, but there's that critical piece of like, what did the council do in May that we won't be able to write until they do the thing in May.
You can't pack your toothbrush until you brush your teeth in the morning, whatever that. We can't have like a second public engagement. Sorry, I'm extending a metaphor too far.
We need to wait for the council to brush their teeth and then we can meet. Yeah.
Yes. I need Chris Campany here. He could extend this metaphor too far. So good at that. Yeah, so I think a June meeting is good, but then yes, absolutely taking July and August off. I mean, honestly, we could probably even take September off as far as I know, but because usually especially for on the first week, beginning of September, it's like the start of school and stuff. So I'd be happy to just go to if anyone has like a reason not to, but like take July, August, September, and then meet in October. October, I think would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with that. I guess another thought that I'm having for the June meeting then would be, and I know those of us that have been on the subcommittee for a while recall we've used that meeting in the past years to kind of develop or begin to generate a plan for engagement in the fall of like, what do we want to focus on when we do reconvene in October? So, you know, based on the plan will be released and like what's then the focus of the subcommittee? What's our charge? What's our purpose? Maybe that's re-engaging with the equity training, or, you know, like just raising up other topics that we may not have had capacity to be attentive to in this busy corporate climate action plan revision process.
And those more in tune with the legislative calendar, that will be June's meeting will be before the veto session. Will it be after?
I don't think we exactly know how long the legislature is going to go this year. I think there's conversation of it being an extended session, or even that the governor has the ability to pull the legislature back for a special session. So I don't think we know, but given kind of what the political kind of messaging has been, is that the legislature will probably be in session through June.
Okay.
Possibly longer.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that what other Carrie, Claire, Sophie, Liz, is that things that you've also heard?
I have heard through June. I haven't heard anything beyond that.
Doesn't surprise me.
No.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm like, oh, planning for the fall, there's a lot of uncertainty, but also, so I wanted to know like what we might have some sense of at that point. You know, there might be changes to the Global Warming Solutions Act, and funding is like always the
Not
question.
this year.
But that's not this year, right? That's what you
Right.
said.
There won't be any to the Global Warming Solutions Act this year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds good, Abby. I mean, like, yeah, just let's try to make some plans for the fall, and even if there's sort of like big tentative plans based on what, you know, but planning to meet at least is a good plan. And then what we want to talk about. Cool. Let's see. Anything, taking time off. Yeah. Unless other people are like, we need to meet in September, I would say let's meet in October. I don't really, because this is like the big crazy plan, you know, the climate action plan needs to be done by this date. I have a feeling that there's not much for us to meet about in September, and we can we'll do June and then meet in October if folks are good to take 3 months off. Cool. Anything we're missing? Did I jump over anything in our agenda? All good. All right.
I say it looks like you covered it all.
Awesome. Thanks,
Following
Carrie.
along on the agenda.
And I don't see any members of the public here, so you know, I know it's like 10 minutes before public comment time, but I'm gonna guess we're cool with not doing that, with ending early. So unless I'll hold some space, unless I am completely wrong and there's a member of the public here who wants to speak. I'm hearing none. Anything else from anybody before we wrap up a little bit early? And I figure everyone's cool with that idea. I will share. Apparently today we had rain up here. I don't know where I'm up in Franklin County. I don't know what you all had, if you had crazy weather or what, rain and crazy wind. But and then the sun came out and I got a message from my husband, he said, I can literally watch the grass grow. I'm not seeing it actually move, but I step away for 10 minutes and I come back and I'm like, oh, it's bigger. So that's exciting. And 2 new lambs were born yesterday. So spring is here.
We had a
Also, National Burrito Day. So
Oh,
happy Burrito Day, everyone.
nice.
Yep.
and
I know somebody who ate a burrito. His goal was to eat a burrito in every single state.
Wow.
And he did.
That's a great
He
goal.
went to every state to eat a burrito.
I know what to make for dinner tonight, Liz. Thank you.
There you go.
All right.
Great to see everyone. Thanks for being here.
Wonderful to see you all. Thank you. And happy spring. And we'll see you next month.
Yes,
not
see you
sooner.
soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ellen.